If you're like me, you love the hidden powers pulling strings from the shadow. Those shadowy hidden organizations that shape the world's events behind the scenes. It's just straight badass. And you've probably wondered, what's that organization for Shadow Slave? Today I'll be talking about it. In Shadow Slave, none are more mysterious than the Nine, forgotten by history, yet their actions reshaped the entire world. In this video, we'll play Lore Detective, following every clue, from the first cryptic encounter to the final truth of who they were. So let's begin. So who are the Nine in Shadow Slave? In the world of Shadow Slave, the Nine are a mysterious group of ancient figures with, I'll say for now, unknown members and purpose, whose actions left deep scars on the history of the Dream Realm, which was noted by the Trials of the Nightmares naming them. Our first brush with the Nine comes very early in the story, during Sunny's first nightmare. In this nightmare, Sunny finds himself a slave belonging to a slave caravan going up a snowy mountain, and among his slavers is a man known as Auro. Sunny initially has a good perception of Auro, but he secretly mistrusts him. Along the way, they get besieged by a mountain creature which starts slaughtering everybody. It's a massacre. They manage to evade it for a while, and they start climbing the mountain in an attempt to escape from it. It was 4 initially, a few of them dying one by one. Sunny, frail and mistrusting of Auro, who appears a valiant, righteous figure, begins to slowly poison him during their ascent of the mountain, knowing he would be no match for him in direct confrontation. Then, in a direct confrontation, Auro has no choice but to feed Sunny to the sharks. He attempts to maim Sunny as to serve as bait for the mountain beast, revealing his true side. But Sunny badassly said, there's nothing worse than a slave who begins to trust his master. And the fruits of his poisoning come to mind, and Auro later dies to the mountain beast. Interestingly enough, when the Nightmare is appraising his performance of the first nightmare, he credits the kill of Auro as, "You have slain Auro of the Nine." And let me tell you something, when I first read this, I was like, oh, that's so interesting. He's called Auro of the Nine. Like, who are the Nine? Who is this mysterious creature? He must belong to some shadowy organization, some hidden group that's not mentioned as of yet. I was keen that this dude was important. Our next encounter with another member of the Nine takes place after the Forgotten Shore, when Nephis was stranded on it and wandered near the edges of the Nightmare Desert. It's there, beneath the blinding white glare of an alien sky, that she stumbled upon a grim and unforgettable sight. 2 weathered corpses nailed high upon the trunk of an enormous white tree. One belonged to the infamous Azarax, the other to Eurys, the prince of the Nine. Though his body had long withered to bone, Eurys was no mindless relic. Even in death, he spoke, his voice wry and sardonic, nailed to that tree by divine punishment, as we later come to know. Eurys has been cursed with a fate far crueler than death. As he told Nephis about his life, he had once slit the throat of a god during the war against the Empire, a defiance that earned him the Shadow God's curse. That curse kept his body anchored to his bones, eternally aware and incapable of rest. I remember the first time I read this, I found it so interesting. She's wandering in the nightmare, and she comes across 2 people even worse than her, nailed to a tree. 2 ancient immortals that have defied the gods and paid the price. But we know little about them, and I craved to know more. It's another member of the Nine. And if this member slit a god's throat, what did the other members of the Nine do? This left me curious for a few hundred chapters, and fast forward a couple of them, and the Nine remain an enigma. Occasional mentions and hints, but no full answers. The next big piece of the puzzle drops when Sunny stumbles upon a mysterious island trapped in a time loop during his third nightmare. On this island, later known as Windflower, Sunny and his friends encounter an eerie tower filled with puzzles and corruption at its center. They notice clues, strange runes and enchantments, suggesting someone powerful had lived there. Eventually, they come to find out that the tower's builder is none other than Aletheia of the Nine. This revelation around chapter 1442 finally puts a name and face to another member of the Nine, Aletheia. A name that literally means truth in Greek, was a sorceress and scholar nicknamed the First Seeker, as she was the first to seek the estuary. Long ago, she built this isolated island and shrouded it in a whirlpool of twisted time, likely to hide from the god's eyes or to safeguard her work. Time flowed strangely on Aletheia's island, almost as if she created her own little world to experiment in. All these clues paint Aletheia as a brilliant but secretive woman, determined to uncover the truth at any cost. But why? Why was she the first to search for the estuary, where a truth so hideous lies buried? Tragically, however, the truth Aletheia sought had dire consequences. When Sunny's cohort finally reaches the heart of the tower, they come to face with what's left of Aletheia, and it's a nightmarish sight. Aletheia had transformed into a sprawling, corrupted monstrosity, essentially becoming the core of the corruption. Her human body was long gone, consumed by a mass of festering flesh and a malignancy that was slowly infecting the entire island. This corruption is so powerful that anyone who touches it becomes tainted. In lore terms, Aletheia had peered into the truth of the estuary, something so horrific, some ultimate truth or cosmic secret that it destroyed their sanity and humanity, earning titles like the source of the defilement and the core of the nightmare. In the end, she was granted mercy by none other than Nephis, who slayed her. And this is the fate of the second member of the Nine that we come to know. But why was she looking and searching for the estuary? Why would a woman so brilliant as her commit to such pursuits? We come to learn this very later in the story. For now, our next glimpse at one of the Nine takes place during Sunny's dangerous foray into the Shadow God's realm during the War of Valor and Song. On his first journey into that cursed domain, Sunny barely survives. Without warning, a black-fletched arrow whistles out of the darkness and buries itself deeply into his chest. Its power and precision unlike anything he has faced before. Sunny barely escaped. Later, on a subsequent incursion into the Shadow God's realm, Sunny finally engages her in a drawn-out battle. The clash is brutal and tense, every arrow forcing him to adapt, every dodge and counterattack testing his limits. This is one of my favorite fights of the entire novel. The sheer badassery Sunny met his match. Who is this mysterious archer among a sea of abominations? It's the only humanoid. By the end of their confrontation, Sunny is forced to admit that if this was her power as nothing more than an echo, a shadow, then in life, she must have been truly formidable. Perhaps one of the deadliest beings he'd ever heard of, perhaps a sacred. In their final moments, Sunny managed to overcome it, and as he's about to slay her, he hears a voice saying to not kill her, and that voice belonged to Eurys, and that's how we reunite with him. He had crawled from the tree he was nailed to, I don't know how, all the way to the Shadow God's domain, looking for a place to die. Obviously he failed. Basically how he got there was he took the entrance on the precipice on the underworld near the Hollow Mountains. He went through the underworld and got to the Shadow God's domain. This is because if you truly go to the core of the Shadow God's domain, you get ground up to essence, basically you die. He converses with Sunny, asking him not to kill her, because that the mysterious archer is the shadow of a person he once knew, one of the 9. He mentions, if I'm not mistaken, that she was once his friend, someone dear to her. We do not know who she is yet, but we get a taste. A bit more information on the Lost from History 9 that left a deep mark on the world, but this one is long dead. Only her shadow lives on. Sunny then converses with Eurys, trying to learn tidbits of the past, and Eurys' tale is equal parts fascinating and horrifying. He admits again that he slit a god's throat, an act which unsurprisingly earned the wrath of the gods. He also gives some tips on sovereignty, the shadow god's realm, but that's for another video. In the end, he tells Sunny that it's a risk to kill her, because since she's a sentient shadow, who's to say she will not slay the other shadows in his soulsea? But Sunny takes the risk, turning that mysterious archer, one of the 9, into his shadow. And it does take a while to tame her, eventually granting her the name of Slayer. And the only requirement that he has with her in order to remain civil is that once a week, if I'm not mistaken, she has to drink a bit of his blood. I don't know if it's because he has the Weaver's blood, I will tie it back to the 9 later, or whatever, I have no clue. Finally, the last mention we have of the 9 is when we know of their truth. The last of the 9 that Sunny directly learns about is Orphe, and her story comes to light in the most dramatic way possible, through a series of vision-like episodes given in Ariel's game, and a bit more context about the Ariel's game. This happens when Sunny attains sovereignty after killing Amber, and then he goes to search for the last piece of the missing Weaver's lineage, and he goes to search the Jade Palace for hidden compartments, where it may be. And in there, he comes across a toy room, and in there lies a board on the floor, a 7x7 jade board, similar to a chessboard. And in those squares lie toys, pieces of terrifying monsters. And when Sunny goes to touch these pieces, he gets transported to a game-made world of that game. It's called Ariel's game, or the Death game basically. And how it works, it's very similar to chess. You have to vanquish the foe. Basically you have to slay the queen, and the queen is the Snow Tyrant. But there are monsters guarding the Snow Tyrant. There are other tyrants guarding it. And every time Sunny defends his square from other tyrants or attacks another square and slays a tyrant, a small figurine drops. And amongst his own base, his queen, there is a volcano. And he threw a figurine into the volcano. And when he did so, he was granted a vision, a truth. When he sacrifices a figurine, which is the reward for slaying a tyrant, he gets to glimpse at a truth, hence the name Ariel's game. This was a game played between Weaver and Ariel. Ariel is the demon of truth. And the first truth that he got to witness is Orphe's memories and fate. In the first vision, she sees Orphe appear as a woman clad in deerskin, initially seen arriving in an ancient temple as a hawk that transforms into a weary human huntress. And there she goes to meet the other 8 members of the 9. She goes to meet Eurys, Auro, Aletheia, a tall warrior with broad shoulders, Daemon, who we will later talk about, a ship captain with bronze skin and sea-colored eyes, a blind poet famed for his song, and a mysterious woman who might be a priestess, a courtesan, or both. And who might this be? We don't have any more information about the tall warrior, the ship captain, the poet, or the mysterious woman. But why did they gather there? The 9 had been summoned there by the oracle of their kingdom in the hour of its greatest need. Notably, the oracle is not a single person but a triad of blind seers who have gazed into the fabric of fate. Kinda reminds me of the Grey Sisters from Greek lore. And they gathered because their homeland was being ravaged and besieged by the Empire of War, and who is supported by the 6 gods. They foresee that their kingdom will fall. There is no saving it. Its cities will burn and its people will be enslaved, and its very name will be forgotten to history. However, the oracle charges the 9 with avenging their land by destroying the gods that protect the empire. a doubting task that Prince Eurys doubts, but is met with the Oracle's chilling directive that they must kill the gods. As their peaceful realm faces annihilation by the War Empire, a crimson tide that thrives on conquest and slavery, though mortals, they will slay the gods. They are tasked with slaying the gods and drowning the world in ichor, as a retribution for the blood of their people that will soon stain the sea red. All 9 carried the fated attribute, which is insane at the moment. They carried the fated attribute in the same kingdom at the same time. The oracles had not sent 9 to fight an empire, but to kill the gods who had abandoned their creation. And somehow they had done it. The gods were dead, the empire had been annihilated, and the world had been broken. It had not been divine wrath nor demonic conquest that ended the Golden Age, but the dark resolve of 9 mortals consumed by vengeance. To equip them for this suicidal quest of slaying the gods, each of the 9 is given a specific fate or role, a task and a quest to ensure their end is met. The vision shows brief flashes of each destiny. Prince Eurys is told he must endure the most bitter task of all, to become a slave. Imagine telling a proud prince that his heroic destiny is to be shackled in servitude. It's likely meant to position Eurys close to the war god's avatars, or to understand the plight of the conqueror. Auro, the red-haired boy, is assigned a task so horrifying that even Orphe, the seasoned Huntress, blanked when she heard it. We aren't shown the details of Auro's mission in the vision, but the reaction implies it involved great sacrifice or atrocity, a harrowing fate indeed for a young boy. Aletheia, described as the philosopher, is tasked with seeking out the truth, to unveil the lies of the gods and teach others how to bring about the lies' downfall. We can connect this to what we saw in her arc. Aemedon, called the sculptor, is charged with actually building the trap that will ensnare the gods, using the truths Aletheia uncovers. He's supposed to shape the gods' hearts into gravestones and build walls of their tomb. This poetic language means Aemedon would create some weapon or scenario to literally entrap or slay gods. Next, the oracle mentions a blind poet whose fate is simply to be lost in illusion. What could this mean? Perhaps meaning he would distract or mislead the gods, or maybe suffer delusions as part of the sacrifice. Another of the 9 is the tall warrior, not named in text, but he presumably had to face the war god's champion head-on. And another is the mysterious courtesan or priestess. We don't know what her role was. It might have been to infiltrate or seduce a spy among the enemies. And lastly, Orphe, the huntress in deerskin, receives the gravest task of them all, to slay Weaver, the demon of fate. And that is the first vision that we've seen. So their plan was set in motion. Aletheia entered the tomb of Ariel and uncovered the hidden truths about the forbidden god and his children, who were described as the flaw of the gods. For seeking this knowledge, she then became the first seeker and ultimately the source of the defilement. But she may have passed on her revelations before succumbing to corruption. Aemedon, a sculptor among the 9, was tasked by the oracle to build a trap for the gods using the truth Aletheia uncovered. This trap was not a physical device, but a metaphorical one, built from the hearts of living beings, specifically the demons. Aemedon delivered the truth to Nether, the prince of the underworld and the demon of destiny, who then led the demons in rebellion, initiating the Doom War. This war ultimately caused the fall of the gods, not by direct assault from the 9, but by manipulating demons into becoming the instrument of divine destruction. Thus, the gods had fallen in battle against the demons, not against the 9 directly, and so the 9's true accomplishment was not in overpowering the gods, but in exposing their weaknesses, the existence of the forgotten god, and orchestrating their fall through indirect means. Other members of the 9 had the unclear roles, but were hinted to be equally significant. Basically, they found a weakness, they built a trap, and struck the god's weak point. The Doom War was the trap Abaddon built by delivering the truth that Aletheia found out to the demons. The demons were the blade, and the forgotten god was the hidden truth that shattered divine rule. But this begs the question, why then did Orphe have to slay Weaver? Through Ariel's visions, we get to see how Orphe's hunt of Weaver played out. In one vision, Sunny sees Weaver's first death at Orphe's hand. On a hellish battlefield engulfed by fire, Orphe tracks the injured demon and strikes him with a poisoned arrow steeped in curse, basically insta-killing Weaver. Auro, I am dying to know what was that forbidden poison that can slay even gods. What's it made out of? What's it called? How does one get it? I need to know. It appeals to the mythos fan inside of me. Weaver, the demon of fate, then collapses, seemingly defeated. But as he dies, he gives Orphe a cryptic warning. Killing a demon comes with a price. And those words prove prophetic. The moment Weaver falls, Orphe herself suddenly experiences a bewildering memory loss. As if fate retaliates for the demon's death, she stands over her vanquished foe and whispers in confusion, "What task?" Not remembering why she is there or what she did. It's a chilling scene. Orphe fulfilled her mission only to have the knowledge of her victory stolen from her mind. This curse of forgetting is perhaps the price Weaver spoke of. However, Weaver, being the demon of fate, was not so easily erased. At this point, Sunny's visions reveal an even more dramatic finale. Weaver resurrects or escapes fate in some fashion. It's implied that he let himself be killed as part of a larger plan. He appears before Orphe again, mocking her weakened state. He calls her by name, Orphe of the Nine, and taunts her that her story isn't finished, forbidding her to die yet. In essence, Weaver challenges Orphe to a rematch in the Shadow Realm, daring her to try and kill him properly the next time. True to her character, Orphe does not back down. She pursues Weaver to the edge of the world, literally to a void gate, a gateway of no return, for their final confrontation. In this climactic vision, chapter 2410, Myriad of Stars, Sunny sees Orphe veiled and clad in blood-stained armor, ambushing Weaver at the last possible moment. Orphe drives a bone dagger into Weaver's back, severing the demon of fate from his own shadow in one decisive strike. This time, there's no escape. The demon is finally and truly slain. However, Orphe herself collapses and dies as well, expiring with a triumphant smile on her face, having accomplished the impossible. So that's why she's in the Shadow God's realm. She has survived there for countless eons as a shadow, slaying other shadows not to die. She was there to slay Weaver in the first place. Damn, this is super interesting. Here are some other connections to the Nine. Sunny, in the underground cell beneath the ruined cathedral of the Dark City, saw the runes left by one of the high priests of the Nightmare spell. These runes, initially unreadable, were later deciphered after his return to the Forgotten Shore as a saint. Attributed to Weaver, the runes foretold that they would open the gates, unleashing doom. These prophecies seemed to align with the aftermath. The gods lay dead, the demons had fallen, and the Forgotten God stirred. What could this mean? Had Weaver foreseen his downfall and the downfall of the gods and demons? Sunny wondered about whether the Forgotten God had been the weapon the Nine intended to unleash, and whether their goal had been to awaken him as revenge against the Empire's tyranny. But he cautioned himself. They could have referred to the Nine, the demons, the gods, or even Weaver. Despite that, the end of the Doom War remained unclear. He questioned whether the Nine had truly succeeded, if the void was truly open, and whether the Forgotten God was awake or still dreaming. Signs like the spread of corruption, nightmare seeds, and the expanding dream realm suggest the void was open, yet Sunny recognized the contradiction. If the Forgotten God were truly awake, all existence would already be consumed. It's a paradox. He realized a fourth force had influenced the world's fate, Weaver. The Oracle had described Weaver as the Nine's greatest obstacle, possibly opposing their goal to destroy the gods. but we don't know what happened. This leaves me with so many unanswered questions. What harrowing task must Auro do? What did Eurys do? What did the other 3 members of the 9 do? What? So many questions. But that's it for me, guys. That's what we know about the 9 so far. I hope I did a pretty good job explaining it. And if you see some lore errors and stuff that's not in place, make sure to let me know in the comments below. And also, please let me know which member of the 9 do you find the most interesting. So, see you next time, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. But in the later chapters, we got a bit more info on the 9, especially regarding the blind poet and Orphe. The blind poet is actually Omer of the 9, and he is finally unveiled in the later chapters as a blind bard of legendary imagination. A figure reminiscent of Homer, whose epic songs could sway even the immortal. Chosen by the Oracle alongside Prince Eurys and the others, Omer's fate was to bring vengeance upon the gods and the Empire of War. He was tasked with a unique mission among the 9, to confront Mirage, the demon of imagination, and enlist her in the rebellion against the gods. Omer ventured into Mirage's realm, the kingdom of imagination, armed not with a blade, but with words and vision. There, the blind poet's limitless creativity captivated the Demon Queen. Mirage granted him the power of the Great Mirror, bidding Omer to weave new worlds from dream and story. In a sequence evocative of Scheherade's 1001 Night, Omer conjured countless realms and fantasies for Mirage. They lived through 1,000 imagined worlds together, each one a tale sung into existence by his voice. When the 1,000th story ended, Mirage challenged Omer to imagine one thing she could not. Whatever final marvel the blind poet created, it stirred the demon of imagination's heart, and Mirage left her palace to join her siblings in the war against the gods, and Omer followed as her guide and inspiration. In his stead, he left behind a magical reflection, the Castellan, to tend the empty palace of imagination. This enchanted caretaker bore Omer's face and memories, yet was not the true man himself, only a reflection. Tragically, Mirage fell in the Doom War, and Omer was believed to have perished with her. His reflection endured through the ages, lingering as a forlorn custodian. In chapter 2547, Sunny encounters this Castellan and recognizes the truth. This revelation paints Omer as a truly mythic figure of tragedy, a mortal whose art toppled a goddess, but whose love and loyalty led to ultimate loss. His story deepens the lore of the 9, adding a chapter of dreams and illusions to their epic tale. Next up is a new revelation around chapter 2570 about Orphe, in which Sunny begins to realize that Slayer's next evolution is unlocking her full shape-shifting ability. The shadow that once could only take nebulous forms might soon return to its former glory and be able to assume shapes of the black leopard, the stag, the boar. All the fearsome forms Orphe had mastered during her time alive. This would make Slayer incredibly versatile and powerful. And this brings about a new theory that I saw on Reddit. When Sunny spills his blood to empower his shadows, and he carries the Weaver's lineage, Slayer responds eagerly, and it is believed that she is trying to reshape herself using Sunny's and Weaver's essence. So this is an epic lore payload in the later chapters, unveiling the last mysteries of the 9 and forging a link between Sunny and those mythic figures. As we move forward in the story, the fates of the remaining unknown members of the 9 still tantalize me. Who is the tall warrior? Who is the sea captain? And who is the priestess? And what was Auro's mission? But what's clear is that 9's legend serves as both a warning and a guiding star. Sunny, the inheritor of their legacy, must heed their lessons. Sometimes victory demands sacrifice.